it's my humble duty to introduce our today's chief guest, Shri Rajeev Chandrasekhar ji. His biodata given to me has been running into pages, and because of paucity of time, I'm trying to constrict as much as possible without leaving out the important points. Shri Rajeev Chandrasekhar ji is an independent member of parliament in the Rajya Sabha from Bangalore, Karnataka. It is very important to add here that he has been elected for the second term in 2012, unopposed, unanimously supported by all the major political parties. Son of a senior Air Force officer born in Ahmedabad, Rajeev ji secured his bachelor's in electrical engineering from Manipal Institute of Technology before moving to Illinois Institute of Technology in US, where he did his master's in computer science. And then he went to Harvard University for an advanced management program degree. He was handpicked by Vinod Dham, the father of Pentium chips, to work at the Intel after his graduation from Illinois Institute of Technology. Rajeev ji is an architect of this 486 chip, which has his own signature. If you see the Intel chip 486, you will find a word called RC written on that, and that is Rajeev Chandrasekhar. He returned to India in the early 90s, and in 1994 he founded the BPL Mobile, the first of its kind, giving the country the first and the largest world-class telecom network. In 2005, he set up the Jupiter Capital with a vision to foray into the business of emerging new markets. Jupiter Capital, which was established with an initial investment of $100 million, currently has investment and managed assets over $1 billion. He is into the world of media and newspapers and news media. He is also in the world of media. Kannada Prabha, Suvarna News, Asia TV channel, along with Indigo FM station in Bangalore and Goa have been established themselves as a major players in his group. Rajeev's entrepreneurial zeal and major initiative won him all-around recognition and awards. They include the recently honored honorary doctorate from Vishweshwar Technology University in Karnataka last year, the Illinois Institute of Technology's Global Service Alumni Association honor. He was also nominated for UK's prestigious Index Freedom of Expression Award for 2013 in the category of Digital Freedom. Rajeev ji served as the youngest president of FICCI, India's apex industry, between 2008 to 2009. He was the first MP out with a report card. Like the students, we give a report card. He was the one who published his own report card on his performance at the end of first term as a Rajya Sabha member.
Dr. Prabhakar Koreji, Dr. Shivanand Kaujalgi ji, Dr. Bhagwadi ji, Dr. M.D. Dikshit, Dr. Desai. Honorable dignitaries, members and staff of the KLE family, my dear students, parents, ladies and gentlemen. Tamalirigu namaskaralu. Thank you for your warm welcome. It's a pleasure to be back in Belgaum and an honor to be part of the 98th Founders Day celebrations today. So thank you for having me. As I heard this morning, at a time when education was a preserve of a small section of privileged Indians, 7 teachers or Saptarishis, as you call them, armed with degrees from Ferguson College, Pune, in the early 1900s, joined hands to make education, basic education, accessible to children of a farming community who were deprived of basic literacy. They were not only committed and determined to serve society, but their sacrifices included decisions not to marry or have children, lest they swerve from their objective. These values, this kind of commitment, has created today a service and focus of excellence exemplified by the KLE Society. I congratulate Dr. Prabhakar Kore and indeed every member of the KLE family for having created such a brilliant and noteworthy institution that is today making a mark not just in India but all over the world. In addition, KLE's role in Belgaum being part of Karnataka and for its important role in drawing the attention of the rest of Karnataka to this part of the state and the development needs of this part of the state are again noteworthy and to be much appreciated. So congratulations again on that. I congratulate the vision and pioneering leadership of Dr. Prabhakar Kore, who has been leading this family and indeed the KLE Society for the past 30 years. And it is amazing to hear that there are 200 institutions shaping the minds and futures of 90,000 students, a whole new generation of enlightened citizens that will go out hopefully and change the direction that our country is moving into. I have been asked to speak on the Indian economy and the challenges and prospects. I don't know if too many of you are interested in it, but I will speak because I've been asked to speak on the subject. I returned to India, as Dr. Dikshit mentioned, in 1991, when the word economic liberalization was just entering the Indian language. I have been fortunate to have been a participant before that, in the late 80s and the early 90s, in the whole Silicon Valley revolution, where 32-bit microprocessors and the whole dual and multiple core processors that you know today, the internet, client servers, routers, low power computing platforms, high-speed processors, all of what you today take for granted were being developed in the early 90s when I was in the Silicon Valley, and I was fortunate to be a bystander and being a participant in that. Similarly, I think I have been fortunate to have been a witness to building blocks of the current India, the present India being built. I was just thinking when I was being shown around this campus, in the 80s I studied in Manipal and in a very similar environment, but the facilities that the students have today and the quality and access to quality education that you have today is a far cry from 2 generations ago. So a lot of progress has been made since the 90s in India, including in education. So, as I was saying, I have spent almost 20 years as an entrepreneur, including 10 in the telecom success story, and the last 7 years in public service as a member of parliament. So I believe this gives me a reasonable background to commentate on economy and indeed our future. So let me start by saying this, and I will not take too much of your time. I know we are running late, but let me say this. As a nation, as a country today, we are facing an extremely challenging period. That our economy is facing challenging times is a non-alarmist and a very polite way of describing our current situation. From an economic standpoint, one of the most difficult since independence. It is difficult even for the most cynical amongst us not to shake our heads in bewilderment at the sharp decline of our economy over the last 3 years, which was just recently, as you know, for those who followed this, we were being called the next economic superpower. In a nutshell, the economic crisis is this. Number one, a sharp decline in our GDP, which has continued for the last 5 quarters. 2, the jobless nature of our economic growth, which is of particular significance for young students who are graduating today. There are not enough jobs being created by our economic model. 3, unabated high inflation for the last 5 years and the painful and direct hit on people's daily lives and the capacities to save and invest. 4, the sharp depreciation of the rupee, which is making everything more expensive. Petrol, diesel on one end to Chinese plastic mugs on the other end. 5, slowdown or a complete stop of risk capital and equity flows from both India and abroad, which is the raw material for industry, manufacturing and business. 6, risk aversion in banks. After many, many years of reckless lending and therefore increasing NPAs and losses, banks are now slowing down lending. And the last quarter's results of public sector banks proves it even more. 7 has to do with government. Many years of profligate spending, a fact that is causing the fiscal deficit and the current account deficit to go out of control. And last, to use an army term, a military term, a government that is missing in action. And this is not a political statement, it is just a fact. I am willing to bet today, with any one of you, that it is going to get worse before it is going to get better. And the reason is, today we are a $1 trillion economy with 1 billion aspirations. And the aspirations are difficult to manage and reverse. Last month, an ET, Economic Times CII survey of young Indian professionals and students in 28 cities concluded that 3 out of 4 young Indians believe that the economy is worse now than it has ever been in the history of India. Last year, Transparency International ranked India as 94th out of the 176 countries on the Corruption Perception Index. I am not saying all this to be negative or cynical. I am saying this so that we understand where we are, so that when we create a solution for the future, we really appreciate where we are to start moving forward. And for all the rhetoric of global slowdown, the hard reality is this. Our current economic crisis is a problem of our own making. History will tell us that this period between 2006 to 2008 and 2009 to now will be periods where we will be seen as having squandered many opportunities. A recent Financial Times article mentioned India as a country that squandered opportunities while sun was shining. And so what was the reason for this? The chickens coming home to roost, as it may be called, was based on a flawed economic vision. That is my view. A vision that has changed very little from the 1990s with its focus on dribbles of foreign investments and calling them reforms. The current model of economic growth is almost driven lazily by statistics like GDP and not job creation, dependence on foreign portfolio flows and not real investment, stock market movements but not really creating manufacturing investments. And what is disturbing is that there is hardly one real innovation in economic management that we can talk about as a people that can be demonstrated over the last decade and a half. And so therefore there is a need to redefine the role of government and restore the credibility of government institutions. We need a new economic architecture and an architecture that is relevant to the next generation, that is going to join the job force, that is going to create families and going to create a life for the next 50, 60 years. And the first step would be, in my opinion, would be to reaffirm the commitment to fiscal responsibility by the government by reinstating the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Bill of 2003, which, as you know, this government removed as soon as they came to power in 2004. Second, our economy needs a strategy that moves away from spending alone to one that focuses on recreating the spirit of enterprise and individual aspiration. Every man or woman in India, regardless of caste, color and creed, must aspire to more than to aspire to his or her dreams. And the government must be a creator and a catalyst and enabler of those dreams, not a bottleneck to those dreams. Third, the government must inculcate a sense of purpose and culture that recognizes that governments are trustees and not owners of public assets and money, and therefore set standards for transparency and disclosure for all deals, that including public assets or money. Our own state has been, as you know, beset with this issue of iron ore and all kinds of other problems where people in government do not take a view, and we have seen this in Spectrum in Delhi as well, where governments treat these assets not as trustees on behalf of the people of India, but rather for themselves. The government can be a catalyst by creating a framework for transparent and fair public policies and institutions which give investors confidence of investing and competing. And finally, to encourage investors, Indian governance, Indian government, the form of government, the relationship between people and government need to be changed. We need real structural reforms, a recognition that Indian democracy and governance is a work in progress and needs deep structural reforms in keeping with the modern changes with the young Indian population and their aspirations and demands and dreams. The simple truth, let me end by saying, about any growth, including economic, that is based on a premise and foundation of efficiency. This is true for KLE Society. You can see that you have grown over the last many decades based on your family's commitment to efficiency and quality. The same philosophy must be applicable to the relationship between people and government. That growth will come when there is a commitment to efficiency, there is a commitment to quality, and there is a commitment to enterprise. Any new economic architecture must address core concerns like governance, government profligacy, outcomes, and corruption to ensure growth is sustainable and not lurching cyclically. As events are showing us, slogans and spendings don't deliver sustainable growth. And a recent powerful editorial by Dr. Pratap Banu Mehta in the Indian Express, Delhi, said the damage that is being inflicted on our country as a result of our silence and our mute acquiescence is creating a damage that many generations will have to suffer. We cannot afford to be silent anymore about the economy if we want for ourselves and our children a better economic future. Thank you again for inviting me to speak. I hope you will invite me again for the 100th year's celebration. I would very much like to be here. Thank you. Namaskara. Ellarigu ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. Jai Karnataka. Jai Hind.